So we'll start here with the first verse, and I'll quickly just play you how it sounds so you can get a feel for it, and then we'll dive into what I did.
Calling every morning, every night, my throat tight, baby, let it breathe. Curvy little princess, have a seat. Confessing all my sins to my sin. If you know about Kim, that's my kid, not my kid. You ain't gotta say I know the source of the fibs. Something don't feel right. That's why it's awkward on date night, late night. Aeroplane mode, girl, say flat. I don't really love you, I just love that you take time. When you stroke my soul, feel the shivers for 8 nights. Daylight to daylight, and when you watershed, we stay loud. They say that opposites attract.
So it's a very strong vocal performance, very powerful. And for me, it's just about keeping all of that energy in there. I'm not trying to reduce that. When I start compressing and EQing and things, I really don't want to take away from the performance. So it's not super wet, it's not super processed, but I'll show you what I did to try and, my attempt of trying to keep the energy right in this verse. The first thing in the chain here is the RX Mouth Declick by Isotope, and I've shown you this in previous videos. I use this just to kind of take out any little clicks and pops out of the raw recording, which you can often get. So I'll play you quickly without this and with it, but you may not be able to hear the subtle changes that it's making.
Calling every morning, every night, my throat tight, baby, let it breathe. Curvy little princess, have a seat. Confessing all my sins to my sin. If you know about Kim, that's my kid, not my kid. Curvy little princess, have a seat. Confessing all my sins to my sin. If you know about Kim, that's my kid, not my kid. You ain't gotta say I know.
So as you can see, it says 10 clicks repaired there. So not really enough to warrant having it on. And this is really optional. I just like to use this just to kind of give me a little cleaning up of the vocals before I get started. Next in the chain is the FabFilter Pro Q. And we're using this to do a high pass filter on the vocal. I don't know if you heard there, but there was a couple of pops on the vocal where we really needed to edit that out. So let me quickly play that with and without.
Curvy little princess, have a seat. Confessing all my sins to my sin. If you Curvy little princess, have a seat. Confessing all my sins to my sin. If you know about Kim, that's my kid, not my kid. You ain't gotta say I know the source of the fibs. Something don't feel right. That's why it's awkward on date night, late night.
So this is the kind of subtractive EQ that I'm using on this vocal to try and just clean it up a little bit. It does take away some of the body of the vocal, some of the nice low end of the vocal a little bit, but as you'll see, I'll bring that back later on with a different EQ. But I'm taking up here, filtering out up to about 80 hertz down there just to take out the pops and the rumble. And then I'm also dipping a little bit here, only 1 dB, 1.5 dB, around 200, which is always a place of kind of annoyance in a vocal. You don't want too much of this low-end mud going on down here. And then I'm also dipping a little bit here where it's probably a little bit sibilant. And then I've got a nice sort of rising shelf up here to kind of bring out some nice air in the vocal. After that, we're using the Waves de-esser, which is still one of my favorite de-essers. And this will be the first de-esser out of, there's 2 de-essers in total on this track, but this is the first one, and you'll hear that this is doing quite a bit for the sound.
Calling every morning, every night, my throat tight, baby, let it breathe. Curvy little princess, have a seat. Confessing all my sins to my sin. If you know about Kim, that's my kid, not my kid. You ain't gotta say I know the source of the fibs. Something don't feel right.
So it's not doing a huge amount, but it's doing just enough to kind of take that initial sibilance away, because it is quite a sibilant vocal, this. Next in the chain, we've got the Sheps Omni channel, and I'm using this as a kind of channel strip. I'm using 3 processors from this: the preamp section, the EQ section, and the compressor section. It's a really nice plugin because you can move these things around. You can have them on or off. You can use what you like. Sometimes I use the de-esser on here as well. I don't really use the gate, but you can use all or 1 or 2 of these things, and move them around as you please. So I've started here adding a little bit of saturation, and then I've boosted some high end here above 7K just to give it some nice high end sheen and some air on there. And then I'm using the compressor with a 4:1 ratio. Quite a fast attack and a really fast release. So let me show you what that's doing. This is going to bring the level up of the vocal a lot with that initial compression.
Calling every morning, every night, my throat tight, baby, let it breathe. Curvy little princess.
So it's given us a lot more level and a lot more kind of power through that compression. I did notice though that there's still a lot of sibilance on the vocal, especially now that compression's been added. That's really brought up the sibilance, so we're going to address that later on. After that, on the actual bus here, so that's all I used on the actual channel itself, and then we're outputting here to the overall verse bus or summing track, and on there we've got the virtual mix rack by Slate. We're doing some EQ on there with the FGN, we're doing some compression with the FG116, and then we're doing a little bit of kind of extra EQ here with the revival. So let me take those two off, so all you're hearing here is the FGN EQ.
Calling every morning, every night, my throat tight, baby, let it breathe. Curvy little princess, have a seat. Confessing all my sins to my sin. If you know about Kim, that's my kid, not my kid. You ain't gotta say I know the source of the fips. Sign don't feel right. That's why it's awkward on date night, late night.
So as you can hear, that's really adding some nice sizzle here with this high end and this little touch of mid-range here. I really like what this EQ sounds like. Also boosting a little bit here in the sort of low mids, but it's barely audible. And then we're using another compressor here.
Calling every morning, every night, my throat tight, baby, let it breathe. Curvy little princess, have a seat. Confessing all my sins to my sin. If you know about Kim, that's my kid, not my kid.
That's just adding a little bit more control on the vocal, just bringing it in line a little bit. And then the revival.
Calling every morning, every night, my throat tight, baby, let it breathe. Curvy little princess, have a seat. Confessing all my sins to my sin. If you know about Kim, that's my kid, not my kid. You ain't gotta say I know the source of the fips. So
as you can hear, all of these things are quite subtle, but overall they do make a difference. So that thickness is really adding some nice low-end warmth to the vocal, and then a little bit more sizzle and shimmer with the shimmer knob here. So let me play you without all of these on and with all of them on.
Calling every morning, every night, my throat tight, baby, let it breathe. Curvy little princess, have a seat. Confessing all my sins to my sin. If you know about Kim, that's my kid, not my kid. You ain't gotta say I know the source of the fips. Sign don't feel right.
So I think that's sounding nicer overall, but there is a lot of sibilance going on here. It's a very sibilant vocal, especially now that we've boosted that high end. You'll see here that I've used this first de-esser just before the first compression. So very early in the chain. All I've done is a little bit of corrective EQ, then I've gone into the first de-esser, then I've gone into the two compressors. Then after that, I'm using another de-esser to kind of do the final taming of the vocal. And that's the way I like to work. There's no rigid set way of doing this, or no like particular order that you should be trying to do this in. That's just the way I like to do it. So for this de-esser, we're using the E2, and this comes in the Slate package. So you hear now that this is really taming those S's.
Calling every morning, every night, my throat tight, baby, let it breathe. Curvy little princess, have a seat. Confessing all my sins to my sin. If you know about Kim, that's my kid, not my kid. You ain't gotta say I know the source of the fips. Sign don't feel right. That's why it's awkward on date night, late night, aeroplane mode.
Now, that sounds like a little bit too much, but you'll see how the other things that I've done then after that have really brought that back out. So after that, we've got the Pro MB by FabFilter, and as you can see, I'm boosting here in the sort of high mids and the high end.
Every morning, every night, my throat tight, baby, let it breathe. Curvy little princess, have a seat. Confessing all my sins to my sin. If you know about Kim, that's my kid, not my kid. You ain't gotta say I know the source of the fips. Sign don't feel right. That's why it's awkward on date night, late night, aeroplane mode, gal, say flat.
So that's just the final kind of icing on the cake. Using a little bit of compression here on the low end, and then boosting in the highs and the mids, but then also using compression so that when they go over a certain threshold, it pulls it back down.
Calling every morning, every night, my throat tight, baby, let it breathe. Curvy little princess, have a seat.
Now, I do just want to mention before we go any further that there is another level of processing going on this vocal. So As you can see, this is the verse main and the verse BV vocal. These both go out to bus 12, which is this verse summing track here. So all of these tracks are contained within this sum. But then this sum, as well as all the other vocal sums, go out to bus 20, which is my all vox sum. So I've got an overall vocal sum, and that is down here. And I've also got processing on this. So this having this overall vocal sum allows me to turn up and down the level of all the vocals together, or solo them, or mute them. So it gives you that extra layer of control, but it also allows you to put overall processing on the vocal. So say, for example, the artist comes back to me and says, I want all the vocals turned up 1 dB or down 1 dB, which happens, then I can simply just turn that up or down 1 dB. I don't have to go through and turn all the vocals up individually. Or if the artist comes back and says, I just want more overall presence on the vocals, I can just pull up an EQ on here, you know, add some presence, add whatever to the end of this. Or even if they say, I just want a little bit more de-essing overall, I can add a de-esser to this overall track, and I won't have to go through and do it to each individual thing. Now, I'm not saying I'm trying to be lazy by having that. I'm just saying it allows me to have that extra overall level of control over all my vocals at once. And it makes, you know, I do a lot of back and forth with artists and producers that want changes, and this just allows an extra level of control. So I hope that's not too confusing in terms of the routing and how I've done it. Please let me know if you want me to do a video on that specifically, and I'll try and do that. But basically, this vocal goes to this bus, which is my verse bus, and then that bus, as well as all my other vocal buses, go out to the all vocals bus, which is kind of like a summing track for all the vocals. And I'm going to show you what I did on there, because it is important to the overall sound of the vocal.
Calling every morning, every night, my throat tight, baby, let it breathe. Curvy little princess, have a seat. Confessing all my sins to my sin. If you know about Kim, that's my kid, not my kid.
So I've used the Sound Toys decapitator here just to add a little bit of bite and a little bit of mild distortion on the overall vocals.
And every night, my throat tight, baby, let it breathe. Curvy little princess, have a seat.
After that, I've used Isotope Neutron Exciter. I really like this plugin just to bring out some extra bite in the high end and in the mids.
And every night, my throat tight, baby, let it breathe. Curvy little princess, have a seat. Confessing all my sins to my sin. If you know about Kim, that's my kid, not my kid.
As you can see, it's kind of adding a lot of high-end sheen and sizzle because I've used the distortion here. And this is the setting I like to use. I like to be over towards the tape. I like to drive it, but then use the blend on quite low. So you're creating the distortion and then you're only blending it in by 20 or 30%. And that's the way I like to do it. And then after that, we've got the Slate Virtual Tape Machine, which is just kind of adding that sort of analog feel at the end of everything.
Calling every morning, every night, my throat tight, baby, let it breathe. Curvy little princess, have a seat. Confessing all my sins to my sin. If you know about Kim, that's my kid.
So that's really doing a few things. I really feel like a low end, a sort of low mid bump going on when that comes in that I like. It's sort of this, gives it this warmth. So it's doing a whole lot, but I like to have this on the end of all my vocals. So I'm going to switch to the second verse now to show you the effects, because obviously this vocal's sounding good, but it's very dry. So I'm going to show you the three things that I've got on this that are creating the kind of the atmosphere and the ambience and the space around this vocal. First thing is a slap delay.
I never fell in love, car I never fell. Till my time with that line, yeah, I wrote it well. Funny how you know me, you don't know yourself. I overestimated, now I'm overwhelmed. Divided my soul, now I'm over.
A slap delay is one of my favorite things to put on a rap vocal. I use it on most of the rap vocals that I record, that I mix, but at different levels, you know. Some tracks call for a really loud slap and a really kind of mid-rangey, in-your-face slap, and some more subtle. This one was kind of in between. I'll show you what it consists of. It's basically the repeater plugin by Slate with the CLA-ish tape slap preset. But then I've also tuned this to my taste. So I've put a low pass filter so there's not too much high end coming through the slap, and then I've put a high pass filter as well, sorry, which is filtering out the sort of low end rumble. I don't want any of that going on in the delay. This is also a stereo. I've made this stereo by reducing the timing on the right channel compared to the left channel, so they're being triggered at slightly different timings in each speaker to create that kind of width.
I never fell in love, car I never fell. Till my time with that land, yeah, I wrote it well.
After that, I've got another delay, which is a quarter note delay. For that, I'm EQing into it to cut out the high end and the super low end. Then I've got the Logic Echo plugin just on quarter note with the feedback at 35.
Funny how you know me, you don't know yourself. I overestimated, now I'm overwhelmed. The fire in my soul, now I'm over self. Put my cards on the table, now I'm overdealt. How real can I get, blood a rap? Remember when you...
This is quite subtle, especially when the song's playing, because I'm actually sidechain compressing this. So I've got compressors after the echo here, and all of these have sidechained to the vocals. So I'm using the chorus to sidechain into that, the verse vocals sidechain into it. All the vocals on the song have got their own sidechain going into this delay. So I'll try and show you a visual representation of that on here when the verse is playing.
I never fell in love, car I never fell. Till my time with that land, yeah, I wrote it well. Funny how you know.
So when this part is pushing down, that's basically turning down the feedback on the delay, so that it's not interfering too much with the words when they're actually playing, and it more fills up the gaps. So you can see there's a lot of gaps on this song, and that's when the delay will really swell into those gaps.
How you know me, you don't know yourself. I overestimated, now I'm overwhelmed. The fire in my soul, now I'm over self. Put my card...
Hopefully you can hear that. Make sure you're wearing headphones or listening in a good environment so you can get that. Next, I'm using the Valhalla Room plugin on the end of that delay, just to kind of... Sometimes this delay can be a little bit too ear-catching, and I wanted it to blend in more in the background. So one way of doing that is to slap a little bit of reverb on the end of the delay, just to kind of make it blend in and become a little bit more sweet and subtle in the background rather than in your face.
I overestimated, now I'm overwhelmed. The fire in my soul, now I'm over self. Put my cards on the table, now I'm overdealt. How real can I get, blood a rap?
So that's the quarter note delay, and then after that we've got a reverb, quite low down in the mix, but it's still playing its part in creating an overall sound here.
I never fell in love, car I never fell. Till my time with that land, yeah, I wrote it well. Funny how you know me, you don't know yourself. I overestimated, now I'm overwhelmed. The fire in my soul, now I'm over self.
So you can see the settings I'm using here on this Verb Suite Classics plugin. Dipping down some of the high end. Got a small short pre-delay on there. I've got quite a lot of width added on here as well. That's probably a little bit more reverb than I would usually use on a rap vocal, but because this song is, you know, it's got that kind of emotion to it, I feel like having a bit more reverb on a rap vocal on a song like this, where there is emotion, where there is real feeling in the song, and it is quite a slow song with a lot of gaps and a lot of space in it, I think the reverb can help to kind of fill that out and just make the vocals sit there nicely. And after that reverb, we just got a couple of EQs here, as you can see, dipping down on some of the highs and the high mids. And then also just filtering out the super lows here, as well as around 200. You know, I don't like to have too much 200 going on in my reverb tails. They can get muddy. So yeah, that's the full vocal mix. So I'm going to play the third verse here just to mix it up a little bit with the beat to show you what it sounded like after.
Lord knows I gave my ex work. I feel growing pains every time I exert. Never find another, yeah, that's how my ex worked. Until you meet another, that is all your ex weren't. Specialize in you, I'm your expert. Like when I got you, just to make my kids surf. In your belly pink. I overestimated, now I'm overwhelmed. The fire in my soul, now I'm over self. Put my cards on the table, now I'm overdealt. How real